My name is Ethan. I'm 30 years old, and until recently, I thought I had a boring, quiet job, the kind of work that doesn't follow you home or keep you awake at night. I was the archivist at Grieville Psychiatric Institute, a decaying relic of a hospital tucked away in the woods of northern Vermont. It was built in 1903 and felt every bit its age. Creaking pipes, stained ceilings, and the kind of silence that made you question whether the building was ever meant for people at all. My job was simple. I filed things: patient histories, treatment records, visitor logs, all of it on paper, thousands upon thousands of yellowed, curling pages stacked in boxes, some dating back a century. I worked alone in the basement, a sprawling vault of forgotten documents that no one had touched in decades. I liked the quiet. I liked the routine. But that changed on a Tuesday. I remember because the weather was unusually warm, and the humidity made everything stick: my clothes, the paper, even my thoughts. That was the day I found a box. It was shoved behind a broken shelf near the back of storage room D, the one we rarely entered. The label read, "To be destroyed. Clearance approved." The date stamp was from the early 90s. Someone had forgotten about it. Inside were standard files, patient charts, dosage logs, outdated intake forms. But near the bottom was something that didn't belong. A small cloth-bound notebook. No name, no identification. Just a single line scrawled in red ink on the cover. Patient 10342. From observation to dissolution. I frowned. Patient numbers were always 6 digits in the newer system. This one was clearly older, pre-digitization, maybe even pre-World War II. I flipped through the logbooks around it, checking the index sheets. No mention of 10,342. Strange. Maybe it was a mistake, a misprint, or a file that had been recategorized. But curiosity had its own gravity. I opened the first page. The handwriting was erratic, jagged, like someone had written while trembling or in the dark. Pencil, faint but legible. The entry read, "They say I'm sick, but I only see what they hide, and that will be the cause of my death." A chill rippled through me. I flipped to the next page, and the next. Each entry was dated, though the year was always missing. Just March 12th, March 13th, and so on. The writing described the patient's daily life. Pills they couldn't identify, rooms that changed sizes, people who whispered without sound. One recurring figure was mentioned repeatedly: the woman in white. The entries became obsessed with her. She walks without sound. Her dress is always clean. Her eyes move wrong. They turn before her head does. She doesn't blink. She never speaks. But when she visits, there's always something left behind. What does that even mean? I thought. A hallucination? A delusion? I find the notes after she leaves. Not in my hand. In my pocket. They weren't there before. I'm sure of it. At this point, I started to feel it. That low hum beneath the skin. Unease without cause. Like something was watching me from the edge of the shelves. I looked up. Nothing. Just dust. Just silence. But the air felt heavier now. I closed the notebook, intending to refile it. But there was no folder. No patient history. No record at all. I ran a search in the physical logs. Patient 10341 existed. Patient 10343 existed. 10342 missing. Gone. I brought the notebook to Dr. Mallory, the head of behavioral records. A stoic man in his 60s with a voice like dried leaves. He examined the cover, flipped through a few pages, and sighed. We sometimes get fakes. People with psychosis sometimes write fictional accounts. It's not uncommon. But this? It's not a real file. There was number 10342. The number was likely assigned by mistake or fabricated by a patient with access to staff materials. I nodded. That explanation made sense. Logical. Neat. Until that evening. I had locked the notebook in my personal filing cabinet, drawer 3, under lock and key. No one else had access. I remember because I always double-check. Always. But when I returned to my office at the end of my shift, drawer 3 was slightly ajar. Inside was the notebook. Shifted. Open. And on the page I hadn't yet turned to, a new line had been added. It wasn't there before. It was in fresh pencil, darker than the rest. And it read, "The one who reads becomes the next." If you see this, run. They already know you know. I stared at the words for a long time. I didn't write it. No one else could have. The handwriting didn't match mine. The cabinet had not been tampered with. Nothing else was touched. That night, I dreamed of static. Not sound, just feeling. White walls. No corners. A buzzing in my bones. I woke up sweating, and for the first time, I hesitated before going back to work. I didn't sleep well that night. I kept replaying the final words in the journal. If you see this, run. They already know you know. Who were they? And how did the notebook move? How did someone write in it if no one else had access to my filing cabinet? When I returned to work the next morning, I told myself I'd been tired, maybe confused. Rationalize it, Ethan. People forget things. They misremember. Maybe I left the drawer open. Maybe the message had always been there, and I just missed it. But when I opened the journal again, not in the cabinet, but already sitting on my desk, I knew better. A new entry had appeared. She came last night. Her mouth moved like broken clockwork. No sound, just that vibration like a voice humming in the ribs. She told me, the reader becomes the voice. The voice becomes the room. I don't know what it means. I don't think I'm meant to. It wasn't my handwriting, but was dated today. And worse, the page smelled faintly of antiseptic, the same kind used in the patient wards. I set the journal down and walked out of the archive. I wanted Dr. Mellery again. He was sitting at his desk, sipping black coffee like always, reading over test assessments. He didn't look up. I just wanted to ask, I said carefully, about a patient. Or maybe not a real patient. The woman in white. That made him pause, just for a second. His fingers stopped tapping the page. Then he looked up and smiled politely. I'm afraid I don't know what you mean. Is this about that notebook again? I nodded. She appears in almost every entry. No name, just descriptions. She doesn't blink. Her eyes move the wrong way. And she speaks through vibration? I don't know. Dr. Mellery leaned back, rubbing the bridge of his nose. Ethan, he said softly, you've been working too many hours in the dark. That archive, it can play tricks on you. Mold spores, dust, isolation. You'd be surprised what your brain starts doing. Take a break. But there is no woman in white. There never was. I left his office, but I knew he was lying. I saw it in the way his left hand trembled, the way he didn't ask to see the notebook this time. That evening, I returned to the archive. Something pulled me there like a string tied around my ribs. The lights buzzed overhead, dim and flickering, and the security monitor, the one that overlooked the basement wing, blinked to life, though I hadn't touched it. And there she was, in the corner of a room that didn't exist, a white-clad figure, still, facing the wall. I zoomed in. The camera image flickered. She turned her head slightly, just enough for me to glimpse the corner of her face. But her eyes, they were already looking at me, straight through the screen. I backed away. I ran down the hall toward that section of the basement. The room on the monitor didn't exist, but I knew where it should be, 2 lefts down the long corridor behind the old maintenance door. And when I reached it, there was nothing, just a blank wall, seamless concrete, no door, no room. I stumbled backward. My hands were shaking. My breath came too fast. On instinct, I returned to the security room and rewound the footage. Nothing. The recording had overwritten itself, or maybe there was nothing to overwrite. I called security. Do the basement cameras store footage? One of the night guards, Colin, shrugged. No, not really. They're on loop. Half of them don't work anyway. That one's not connected to anything. It's just demo footage. Static. Static? I whispered. He nodded. We just loop a blank feed. There's nothing real down there. But I saw her. I know I did. That night, I dreamt of a long hallway. Endless, white, humming with soundless pressure. At the end of it stood the woman. Her face was blank. No mouth, no nose, just 2 wide, unblinking eyes that rotated slightly as if suspended on invisible strings. She reached for me. I didn't run. I couldn't. My feet were frozen in place, as if the ground beneath me was part of me. Then she spoke. Not in words, not even in thought, but in vibration. It wasn't sound. It wasn't hallucination. It was a deep, internal thrum that moved through my ribs and spine and teeth like bone-deep thunder. She said, "You're in the middle now. Observation has ended. Record the rest. I woke up gasping, and the journal was in my bed, on the nightstand, open, waiting. A new entry was there, this time written in my own handwriting. I saw her, and she saw me. She told me it's my turn to write. I didn't write this. I stopped trusting the floor plans of Grieville Institute after what happened on Wednesday. Up until then, I clung to logic, to procedure, that there were answers buried somewhere under the dust and mold, that if I traced the paper trail long enough, I could explain the strange journal, the woman in white, the missing patient number. But when I found the room, that all fell apart. It started with a hallway I didn't recognize. I was reorganizing old treatment logs in Sector B, an area I rarely visited. The walls were narrower here, and the light harsher. I walked the same path I always took to return to the main archive, passing door B27, then B28. But then, a third door. No label, no doorknob, just a small square of smooth metal set into the wall, flush and silent. That door had never been there. Not once in 3 years of working in this wing. I pressed my palm to it. Cold. Then, as if by instinct, I placed my thumb against the lower edge, and it clicked open like a pressure seal. No creak, no resistance. Just darkness. I hesitated. The notebook had been with me all day, tucked into my bag, though I couldn't recall putting it there that morning. I pulled it out now. A fresh line had appeared. The room opens when it's ready, not when you are. I stepped inside. It was a narrow, windowless chamber, maybe 15 feet across, completely empty, except for a wooden chair bolted to the center of the floor and an old camcorder mounted high on the opposite wall. A thin red light blinked above the lens. Recording. There were no outlets, no cables, no indication of how the camera was powered. But it was on, and then I noticed it, the smell. Dust, yes, but beneath it, something sweet, overripe, almost metallic, like rotting fruit mixed with antiseptic. I circled the room, trying not to touch the walls. No files, no tags, no identifying markers. But taped to the underside of the chair, I found something. A photo, faded, water-damaged, of me. Not recent, not from my staff file. This photo looked old, as if taken years ago. The edges were curled, the ink bleeding, and I looked different. Not younger, not older, just wrong, as if someone had drawn me from memory or from a dream they couldn't quite finish. In the picture, I was sitting in the same chair, same room, same camcorder, staring directly at the lens with eyes wide open. My breath hitched. I stumbled back, slamming against the wall. The door, which had stayed cracked open behind me, slammed shut. Pitch black. No light. No air movement. Nothing. Then a sound. Click. The camera above me, it adjusted. The lens turned, and from somewhere a voice hummed. Not words, just vibration. A low thrumming in my chest, rising like static, like pressure building behind the eardrum. I don't know how long I was inside. 5 minutes? An hour? There was no time in there. But when the door opened again, I found myself back in the hallway. The photo gone. The room sealed. I turned to the wall to find it completely smooth, as if the door had never been there at all. I ran. Back in the archive, I tried to find records of room B29, if that's even what it was. I checked old maps, blueprints, staff directories, security logs. Nothing. There was no record of a door between B28 and B30. The wall was supposed to be solid. A support beam ran through that space, according to the 1985 renovation plans. That night, I dream again. The chair, the room, the camcorder's red eye. Except this time, I wasn't alone. Across from me, in the corner, sat the woman in white. Still, silent, unblinking. Her neck bent at an unnatural angle. Her lips moved, twitched, and then she whispered, not into the air, but directly into the back of my skull. Your face has already been recorded. Your file is being prepared. The number waits. I woke up screaming. The next morning, the journal sat open on my kitchen table. A new page, in red pencil. Recording complete. File archived. Patient 10342. Status, in progress. And below that, my name, my real name, spelled incorrectly, twisted, as if it had been translated into something less human, something archival. I no longer trust waking. It used to be that dreams felt unreal, soft at the edges, thin like fog. But now, waking feels thinner. Each morning, I peel myself out of sleep like a skin that no longer fits. And every morning since the journal has waited. Always open. Always with something new inside. 2 nights ago, I left it in a locked drawer. Last night, in my car beneath the passenger seat. This morning, it was on my pillow, open to a fresh page. Not written in pencil this time. Ink. Dark, glossy. Still drying. But I had no pens in the apartment. Not anymore. The message was short. He dreams, so we write. He doubts, so we speak. And below it, a shaky line that looked like the start of a new entry. My name was scrawled at the top. Not Ethan. Just Patient 10342. I didn't go to work that day. Instead, I drove 3 towns over to a used electronics shop and bought a cassette recorder. Something analog. Untouchable. I brought it home and sat in my kitchen, staring at the journal in front of me. I pressed record. My voice sounded thin, even to me. Entry 1. I don't know if this is real. I don't know if I'm already inside something. But the notebook writes itself. I wake up and there it is. Sometimes it uses my handwriting. Sometimes it writes about me, things I haven't done, or things I might still do. I paused, rewound, listened. The tape hissed slightly, then played back my voice. Nothing strange, at first. Then, as I was about to rewind again, a low whisper emerged behind my last word. Barely audible, just 2 syllables. Record continue. My stomach turned. I played it again. There it was. My voice, and something else behind it. I slammed the stop button and yanked the tape out, heart racing. Whatever this was, it was bleeding through. I returned to the archive late that night, long after everyone had gone home. I had to see if the journal had ever been cataloged, if it had a barcode, a number, anything. I searched every reference log, every record between 10,000 and 11,000. Patient 10342 didn't exist. But I found something else. In the 1962 records, under miscellaneous discharges, there was a redacted file. Patient listed only as no diagnosis, no outcome, just a single note in the margin. Transferred to internal documentation. Retained for narrative evaluation. Narrative? What kind of hospital use is that word? Then I saw the timestamp on the file. March 12th, the same date as the first journal entry. Exactly 63 years ago. I printed it out, but when I returned to my desk, the notebook was gone, and sitting in its place was the same printed file, but now it had a new header at the top. Typed, not printed. Internal entry. Archivist intake form. Subject ID 10342. Status, waking integration, 50%. I drove home in a panic. Nothing outside made sense anymore. Street names looked wrong. Traffic lights blinked out of sequence. I passed a sign that simply said, "You were always here." At home, the power flickered. My fridge was humming a slow, low tone, not mechanical but musical. It vibrated through the floor. I opened the freezer and found the journal inside. Frost on the corners, but warm to the touch. That night, I dreamed of the woman again, but this time she was closer. Inches away, I could feel her breathless presence beside me, like cold static pressed against skin. Her mouth moved erratically, glitching like a scratched DVD. And she said, "The page turns when your mind breaks. The final voice writes itself." Her hand reached toward my temple. I couldn't move. She whispered a final phrase, something so quiet I didn't hear it with my ears. I felt in my throat. "You were always the archivist of your own undoing." I woke up screaming. This time, the journal wasn't beside me. It was in my hands, open, and the latest entry was unmistakably written in my handwriting. Even the signature. Patient 10,342. Entry 47. Slept poorly. Dreamed again. Woman spoke directly. No longer afraid. I accept the role. But I never wrote that. Did I? The human brain isn't meant to hold contradictions for long. It chooses a side. It has to. That's why I told myself for days that I was still Ethan. that I had a job, a background, a timeline. But yesterday, I called my old apartment in Boston, the one I left 5 years ago before coming to Greenville. The man who answered said he'd lived there since 2003. I was 17 in 2003. My name wasn't on any lease. No record at all. I hung up without saying a word. Something is rewriting me. Not just memories, records, where I lived, where I worked. Even when I said, I visited my old university's registrar office. Show them my ID. The clerk tapped at his keyboard, frowned, tried again. No record of a student named Ethan Caldwell, he said. But I graduated in 2017, I whispered. He shook his head. Sir, this building hasn't had physical graduation ceremonies since 2009. I drove back to Greenville that night and parked across the street from the hospital. I didn't go in, just sat and stared at the dark windows. That's when a figure appeared in the lobby, lit only by emergency light. The woman in white, standing still, watching me. And for the first time, she waved. I didn't sleep. I started combing every old staff directory I could find, looking for anyone who might remember this place the way I do. And in a retirement listing from 1981, I found him. Thomas G. Hurst, former sanitation tech, Greenville Institute, 1958 to 1979. I tracked him to a senior care facility in Holcomb Valley. He was 93, half-blind, slow. But when I said 10342, his hand began to shake. He didn't ask how I found him. He just muttered, "They still using that damn number?" I leaned forward. You know what it is? He nodded slowly, eyes wet. It's not a patient ID. That's what they told us it was back then. But it's not. It's a designation, a kind of infection, one that passes through knowledge. I froze. It's a code they put on certain cases, not people cases. Stories, fragments, anything that might pull someone in too deep, anything that might wake them up. Once you read it, it's too late. You're flagged, recorded. Recorded for what? Containment, absorption, retelling. That's how it spreads. Through memory, through record keeping. He looked directly at me then. His eyes were clouded, but sharp. You've seen her, haven't you? The woman. I nodded. Then it's already inside you. The number isn't a label, it's a sentence. He leaned closer. Once your story reaches the end, you won't be part of it anymore. You'll be the archive itself, waiting for the next one to find you. I couldn't breathe. When I returned home, the notebook was sitting on my porch, wrapped in brown paper, addressed to the Archivist. No postage, no sender. Inside was a new page. Narrative convergence approaching. Integration 84%. Underneath it, in my own writing, I've stopped fighting the structure. I know the ending isn't mine to decide. I don't remember writing it, but my hand aches. My fingernails are black with ink I don't own. I called Dr. Mellery in desperation, told him everything. The journal, the dreams, the disappearing records. He was quiet for a long time. Then he said, Ethan, listen carefully. There is no patient 10342. There never was. There is only the story. And once it's read, it requires a new narrator. I blinked. You knew. We all do. But only some of us are chosen to carry it. And then he hung up. This morning, I checked my ID badge. The name is smudged now. Not erased, distorted. Like ink bleeding underwater. My title has changed. Archive, active status, 10342. Role, continuity agent. I looked in the mirror and saw someone I don't quite recognize. But he was smiling. I went to the police. It was a last act of desperation, a scream into the wind. I sat in the Greenville County Precinct lobby for over an hour, holding the notebook tight to my chest. When the officer finally called me back, I handed it over and said, There's something wrong in the hospital. Something in the archives. A file that shouldn't exist. People are disappearing. He flipped through the pages slowly, then looked at me. Blank. Every page. Just yellow paper. No handwriting. No patient number. No threat. He handed it back like it was trash. Sir, I think you should get some rest. No, I whispered. You have to believe me. He sighed, typed something into his terminal, and frowned. Then he asked, What's your name again? Ethan Caldwell. He shook his head. There's no Ethan Caldwell listed in the Grieville employee system. In fact, he turned the screen so I could see Grieville Institute doesn't have any staff assigned to the archive department. I froze. I typed my own badge number in. Nothing. No results. No staff ID. No digital footprint. He raised an eyebrow. Are you feeling all right? I drove straight to the hospital, burst through the front doors, ignored the receptionist's protests, ran down the hall to the lower levels. The archive door locked. My key card didn't work. I banged on it until my knuckles bled. When security dragged me out, I screamed. Look at the monitors. Look at camera B16. There's someone in there. She's in there. They didn't even respond. They acted like I wasn't worth hearing. Back at my apartment, I found the lights all turned on. The refrigerator was humming again, low, rhythmic, almost melodic. My phone rang. Unknown number. I answered. Nothing on the line. Just a faint, distant scratching sound, like someone writing. I hung up. The journal was waiting on my bed. Of course it was. It opened on its own. I didn't even touch it. The pages turned, one after another, in unnatural rhythm, until it landed on a fresh entry, written in a perfect replica of my hand. He no longer exists outside the narrative. Below that, a printed stamp as if done by a machine. Archive absorption complete. File 10342. Human footprint expunged. Continuity preserved. I call my old co-worker, Riley, who used to do intake forms on the first floor. We'd share coffee breaks every Thursday. Laughed about the patients who insisted squirrels were robots. She answered, Hello. Riley, it's Ethan. You remember me, right? Please say you remember me. Long pause. Ooh, Ethan. We worked together for 3 years. I'm sorry, I don't know that name. She hung up. I sat on the floor for over an hour. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I just listened to the house. It was breathing. At midnight, I woke up on the floor. The journal was open again. One final message. Patient 10342 has completed structural disintegration. Remaining identity has been incorporated into the holding system. Observer now functions as transmitter. My reflection in the window was off. Not wrong. Just edited. Smoother. Sharper. My eyes didn't blink. They stared forward, even when my head tilted slightly to the side. I tried burning the journal. I stood outside in the woods and lit a match. The flames caught quickly, but instead of curling black, the pages just peeled apart like skin. Layer after layer after layer. No ash. No heat. Just revelation. And on the innermost layer, underneath all the entries, were faces. Dozens of them, all looking outward. Some crying. Some smiling. Some blank. And one of them was mine. This morning, I received a letter. No return address. Inside was a single slip of paper, typed neatly. The archivist has been recorded. Memory is no longer private. Story persists. Await next voice. Below it, one line handwritten in red ink. Welcome to the stack. I don't know what day it is. I used to mark time by clocks, by coffee breaks, by other people's footsteps in the hallway. Now I wake when the journal wants me to, sleep when the writing stops, eat when the humming in the walls subsides. The pages no longer need my hand. They write themselves, in ink, in ash, in blood I don't recognize. This morning, I looked in the mirror and didn't blink. It's strange, I still move, still breathe, but the reflection holds its gaze. My head tilts. The eyes don't follow. The last thing tethering me to the eye that was Ethan Caldwell was a folder in a storage box marked Employment Records, 2019 to 2022. I returned to the archive, hoping it still existed. I didn't find it, but I found something else. A shelf, empty except for a single white card. Patient 10342. File transferred TO, recursive index. Narrative active. Completion deferred. I wandered the halls afterward. No one looked at me. No one spoke. At one point, I passed a nurse I knew. Kelsey. She smiled politely, the way you smile a stranger. Not an ounce of recognition. I passed my old office. The nameplate read, vacant, and on the desk, neatly folded, was my coat. Inside the pocket, the notebook, as if it had never left. That night, I dreamed of a library. Infinite. Boundless. Each shelf humming with stories, some screaming, some whispering, and the woman in white stood at the center. She turned, and for the first time, I saw her face clearly. It was mine, not mirrored, not copied, mine. She reached out and placed a blank journal in my hands. Her lips moved, twitching, gliding, breaking. And then, with vibration deep in my chest, the recorder is not the voice. The voice is the invitation. You are not the story. You are the shelf. I woke up. The journal was on my lap. Only one page left. The others are filled by someone, something, some collective remembering. And this last one, it's yours. Yes, you reading this now. I can feel the final ink forming, even as I think. It spells your name, not on the paper, but beneath it, as if your eyes are pressing it into the page from the other side. And just before the lines dry, the journal writes. You turn the last page. You read until the end. So tell us, who are you now? Below that, patient 10342, transfer pending. If you remember this, you are part of it. I leave the journal on the table, open, waiting for your first entry.